Good afternoon, all. We are here, Townsend Finance Committee, and we'd like to call the meeting to order at 4:05 p.m. and make the announcement that we are recording and playing on the local channel in addition. So,
Do you need a roll call?
Gene is
Yep.
in.
okay, Jean is here.
Geraldine Bazikas.
Jerry is here. Sue is here.
Don Hayes here
Don is here.
on the Zoom.
Andrea.
Andrea's here.
Andrea's here.
And Veronica. do
Well,
we-
she's not on the
No,
board. so-
okay, she's not on the board. Okay, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. With the roll call and a quorum, we are recording the meeting for the Finance Committee today. And I'm sorry, where I'm in the room, Andrea, I just want to make sure, you okay with me continuing to sort of run it from here?
Oh, yes. I'm very grateful that you're doing it.
Thank you. Um,
114.
1.4. The only thing I will say with the 1.4, there was an email I received from Veronica. So as we talk about the future meeting dates and times, we will discuss the meeting with the Selectmen for November 16th as the detail is. The 16th is already on our schedule, but we may modify the time to meet with the Selectmen.
Right.
So that, there is nothing else I'm aware for additions or deletions from the agenda. Anything from anybody else we need to address?
So,
I don't
Okay.
think so.
Then we'll move on to 1.5. Last time we had not seen anything in the correspondence. Do we have anything?
nothing today.
Okay. Okay, so moving on with into the meeting business. We've now had 2 of the 3 meetings, and the last one is tonight.
Yeah.
7 o'clock. Anything more from that, Sue?
No, I mean, I enjoyed the last one. I sent it to you guys. Hopefully you have a chance to watch it.
Okay. Make a motion to accept the minutes of October 26th.
Okay, we have a motion to accept and a second. We need the roll call. Any discussion? We're good to vote on it.
Roll call vote.
Roll call vote.
Geraldine Bazikas, yes.
Andrea Wood, yes.
Andrea, yes.
Gene, yes.
Don Hayes, yes.
And I think 2.3 was left over.
It was there, it was there. We talked about it at the last meeting, but I don't know that we've logged, if anybody has logged in, or if that's still something we need to do as an action to review the information that the Selectmen have asked us to look at.
For the ARPA funds?
For the opera funds, wasn't there a website?
Oh, I think Veronica had asked us to stop down in room 2 and look at what's on the board down there so far.
Okay. Now
So
I-
that's an open, old-fashioned poster board fill-in project that you might want to have considered for ARPA funds.
Mhm.
You also could you can't get downstairs, or it's not, you want to just send Veronica an email with your suggestions of where that money is spent.
Mhm.
It looks like Veronica's got a hand up.
Oh, thank you. I didn't miss that. Yes, Veronica?
Veronica, you're muted.
I'm unmuted now. Is there, the question is,
I was there, and Ross has answered it. It was kind of, in the last meeting, it was mentioned that we review something, and I just didn't have a chance to look at, and I didn't know if anybody else did. So
it's just a placeholder.
it's a placeholder for it to make sure we review, and if we have any input, we will get it to you.
as Ross just
Yeah.
suggested, that would be the path, either with the marker downstairs or email. So,
Mhm.
So I
Thank
believe the
you.
select board's planning to meet Monday this coming week to discuss review options. So
So,
between now and Monday,
is when we have.
write or send your comments.
yeah, that would be great. Our goal, timeline-wise, is by December 6th, on December 6th, to have the projects pretty well defined for this fiscal year's tranche, or whatever they call it. So, yeah, that's our plan. So we would like it for Monday so we can get it in the discussion. We have another
Mhm.
working meeting on the 22nd. For Monday morning, same time, 9 to 11. And we do have a Zoom link for this week's meeting. We didn't the first meeting that we had, because that was the first time we as a board did it, but we do have a Zoom link posted for Monday, the 8th. And depending on where we are, the 22nd will either be a live broadcast upstairs in the Selectmen's chamber, or there will definitely be a Zoom link for that meeting as well. So if that helps time-wise,
It does. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Yeah, we are 2.4, the discuss special town meeting planned for December, the warrant articles.
So I
We'll
brought
start with-
copies of the warrant as it stands this morning. If you have one before this.
It is now obsolete. Yeah.
Oh, so the one that you sent us this afternoon?
I think this morning.
Yeah.
So the code to my version control is the top left corner. It should say November 4th at 8:30.
That's the one that
That's one I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it says anything before that, you can disregard it, because,
No,
and I will do this as we go with other handouts,
Mhm.
because it's too easy to get caught up on the last version, and I somewhat apologize, but these things are fluid and I'm changing them
Mhm.
on the fly. So the current version is the one timestamped 8:30 this morning. You want me to go through each article, or you want to just ask questions, or how would you like to review this?
I guess if I had a preference, I'll throw it out there for discussion. I'd look at the articles, but skip Article 2, because that has the detail behind it.
Yep.
And do that as the last piece.
And does the finance committee anticipate voting to recommend these articles
No.
up and down? And if so, do you want to do that and have me note it on the warrant, or do you want to do it as a separate handout that goes with the warrant? Or do you want to stand up at town meeting and say that? I'm sort of want to do it the way you want to do it, so.
Andrea, how do we usually do that?
We usually write something for inclusion in the packet for the meeting, and get up and speak, or they call on us and ask questions and stuff. But we have always printed recommendations.
And you do that as a separate sheet, or that's attached to the warrant, or would you like to do it sort of as inclusion underneath each warrant, each article description.
In the past, it's been done both ways. I think, didn't Jim put our recommendations at the side?
I believe I saw one from Carolyn that showed it as a separate sheet.
It was a separate sheet. last
It-
year.
Oh,
It
okay,
was a-
well,
But it was also
usually-
in the.
I actually think it would be better to have it near the article or the budget,
Mhm.
whichever, because as a separate sheet, sometimes people just ignore it.
So underneath it.
Yeah, I'm glad to
Okay.
insert
Yeah.
it underneath each article.
Mhm.
The catch to that is I'm hoping to get it wrapped up on Monday, the 15th, so that I can get it, the selectmen to sign on the night of the 16th. So I need your input prior to,
So we're meeting again next week, correct?
It wasn't, we
Or
we
was
had
next week the
scheduled
one-
2 weeks. We thought after this one, there'd be a break. So, knowing the timeline, it makes sense to.
So we're
look at-
meeting on the 16th.
That's
all right.
me on the 16th.
We're meeting, we had this scheduled for the 16th, and the selectmen also were looking to meet with the finance committee and discuss it. So,
So I guess I could stretch it and say, after the 16th, I'll need your comments.
Well, should we go through them each tonight then? And,
Well,
Yes,
yeah,
what we might plan on doing is on the 16th, doing the actual votes.
but we should discuss it before.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, tonight we're gonna
Yeah.
start, and
Okay,
then we'll probably have another discussion
yeah,
so we, yeah.
on
we
the
may-
16th.
okay.
Just as editor in chief, I need to know your plan so I can.
Well, we'll go through it tonight. And then discuss it, and should we do the,
So
And
what did you want to do? Skip over?
Number 8, Article 2, which is the full
big
budget with all the different lines that are changing in the
Okay.
total budget.
And come back to that?
And then come back to that, yeah.
Okay,
If, again, if everybody's okay with.
so actually, we could, if we don't have any issues with some of them, we could just vote for them,
right,
vote to recommend tonight,
Right.
right?
Yes,
Okay, so Article 1, somebody want to read that, or you want me to?
go ahead.
Okay, see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds in the treasury the sum of $5,165.20 or any other sum for the purpose of paying prior fiscal year bills. One of the bills is 1565.20 to impact fire for sprinkler system repair, and $3,600 to CM Geeks for installation of new PCs.
I'd like to know where both these bills occurred in 2021.
Yes. Both of them were for work done at the police station, and for some reason, the invoices got misplaced and weren't handled before the cutoff, so we need to address them as part of the special.
And since they're old bills, we actually don't have any choice. It's an obligation to the town.
Right. I'll make a motion that we pay the bills,
That we,
pass through bills.
no,
We
that we
approve.
recommend this.
I
article.
recommend, all right,
Right.
recommend this article, yes.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept Article 1 and it's been seconded, and we need the voice roll call.
Geraldine, yes?
Wood? Yes,
Green, yes.
Lucio, yes.
Don Hayes, yes.
Unanimous. Okay. Okay, so we'll move to recommend that one, so you can put that one in.
Mhm.
Do you want to put any pros with that, Andrea?
do I want to what?
Do you want to expand on it or just say finance committee recommended?
Recommended, it's an obligation. That's,
Okay.
that's enough. We have to pay our bills and we have to pay it. We have no choice. We can say that. It's an obligation of the town. If you want to
Okay,
write
Ross?
something.
Got it?
Yeah,
Yep, Ross is writing it down as you speak. Okay, Article 3, to see if the town will vote to appropriate from the water enterprise free cash the sum of $14,917.22 to reimburse the stabilization fund. This has to do with water. And they're using their free cash to their stabilization fund.
And is there, okay, and the description, so this,
So
was
this-
for- yeah, the description underneath is that it's retroactive pay for the water department union employees. Article 3 had continued on to the next page.
Oh, it continues. When the retroactive pay for water department union employees was approved at the May 8th town meeting, these funds should have been appropriated from the water enterprise free cash. This merely reimburses the stabilization funds for costs associated with enterprise. Well, does free cash pay for raises?
This is free cash from, or the state, it's the stabilization, yeah, it's free cash from the water enterprise, free cash. So their receipts
it's their own.
are reimbursing our stabilization fund to the town for the raise amounts.
Somehow that feels kludgy to me. It
Well,
sounds more.
Yeah.
It sounds more like they were short the $14,000 in raises to put into their salary accounts.
I
And so they-
talked to, I'm sorry.
That's all right, go ahead.
I talked to the superintendent today, and he told me it was just an oversight. They raised it for all union employees, not thinking the 3 of the employees were on the water department, and their monies would have to be taken, couldn't be taken from the stabilization fund, but had to come from the water enterprise.
Oh, I got you, instead of the town stabilization fund.
Right,
That's interesting. So they're gonna take their free cash and put it back into the town stabilization fund.
right.
Yes.
That's a very important distinction.
Can you make that distinction when you write that up?
It's not their stabilization fund, it's
ours.
the town.
It's the town's.
Right, so it's
So
just a,
instead of spending 150,000, we spent 140,
I
whatever.
could insert in the main article where it says to reimburse the stabilization fund, to reimburse the town's stabilization fund.
Yeah,
Yes, that's clearer.
That's why we do these.
Mhm.
Now that makes sense.
okay. Do we have any other discussion on Article 3?
No, but on the description, could we also add town stabilization fund in that last sentence too?
Yes.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to recommend or not recommend?
I'll make a motion to recommend.
Second,
Okay, so we have a motion to accept Article 3 with proposed changes. And a second, and we need the voice.
Geraldine, yes?
Sulicio, yes.
Henry,
Dean, yes.
Don, yes.
So I noted down, the finance committee recommends this article. Do you wish to say anything else or what's?
Want to say anything else? This was just a,
It was, maybe, it's kind of like, maybe we should take some time and put some words, because it was an oversight at the town meeting when we voted to make the pay from the stabilization fund for the retroactive raises. So
right, so this is putting it back.
this is just putting it back. It was an oversight at the annual, and this is correcting that oversight, so.
And it is fair to say, but do you want to say this is tax neutral, it does not impact your taxes?
Well, I mean, it's actually, it's paying back the stabilization fund. So it's to our
To our
betterment.
advantage, to our advantage.
It's,
This is to reimburse the town stabilization fund
right,
for money that should have come from the water accounts.
so, yeah, I'm trying to think of your words. I think they're good because we've never, I don't think in the past, and I've only been here a short time, that we didn't include whether it was tax neutral or tax, but I think that's a good, good line to have in there so that we identify to the town whether there's gonna be an impact on their taxes. So,
It actually lessens the impact
well,
of the town meeting's vote.
it
use
lessens the impact,
stabilization
it helps with some of the other,
Right.
but the other, some of the other articles that we're going to be looking for money for, so. you
Well,
know.
not really.
Yeah, no, because it's in the stabilization fund, you're right.
It's,
You have to-
okay,
Okay.
so, I hate to use the word error. What's another word?
No, well, I think you said this replaces funds taken from the stabilization account.
That
Mhm.
should have been taken from water enterprise
Well, I
account.
think that's sort of said in the article, but you
Right.
could go on to say, and does not impact your tax rate.
Well, I know, but it's not, it doesn't, it positively impacts our stabilization fund.
Mhm.
That's why we're for it,
Yes, okay.
okay? So it gives, it positively impacts our stabilization fund balance. So the finance committee is recommending it. Either way, it doesn't have to do with taxes. Well, we put something back anyway, huh?
Mhm.
How much was it?
14,947,
Okay,
Oh, good.
917.
Article 4, you ready?
You all set with your wording? Okay, yes, Article 4.
See if the town will vote to reallocate $70,000, the amount approved at the May 8th, 2021 annual town meeting, to fund the Greely Road upgrade or take any other action.
Where's Greeley Road?
I don't know what that means. Does anybody know what that means?
There was an article last May to do work at Main Street and South Street. And now, because they've got some different definition of the project and possibly ARPA funds being used for that, I believe, they're gonna transfer a previously approved article to the Greeley Road project. So it's
So they didn't use all the money, or what is it?
No, no, this,
Before the opera funds request gets done?
Veronica, is it looking like your hand is up or is that still up from previous?
Oh, on my end, it was taken down. That was from
Okay.
previous. Andrea
Okay.
answered that question.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry.
So I don't
it's kinda-
believe the Main Street project is to be done, but I think they have they redefined how it is or how it's going to be funded. And there's $70,000 that is no longer needed, but since it was allocated for that project, they're going to suggest to allocate it for the Greeley Road project. The Greeley Road project is a case where the water main goes through the basement of a private house, something that's left over from
Mhm.
decades, if not 100 years ago, and they need to relocate that back into the street.
So the 70,000 didn't get spent.
No, so they're gonna change
Either
it to another.
didn't get spent or isn't needed to be spent.
Is it, or potentially not needed to be spent? If you're talking ARPA funds.
I think that is correct.
Veronica, do you know anything about this?
I think that Ross pretty much covered it. We don't know how we're going to spend the ARPA funds yet. That is true.
Mhm.
However, for infrastructure, the only allowed uses for infrastructure are water, sewer, and broadband. And so depending on the other projects that come in, it's possible that if there is work still needed at South Street, funding could come from there either this year or next year. So if there's another project that needs, it just makes sense, and it's what the water department wants to do. They get to pick their projects in the order that they want and fund them as needed. So that's all I have to say.
Plus, what Ross said before applies here too. The $70,000 isn't tax money. This is from water receipts. It doesn't affect the people's tax rate. So there really is no reason to oppose it.
Okay,
No, and just, I'm looking at it and I just called up where it is. Greely Road comes into Main Street behind Gary's farm too.
Oh.
Up past Sterilite on the left, so.
Well, I make a motion that we recommend 70,000.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to support Article 4 and the second. Any other discussion on the article? If none, we're ready to take a vote.
Andrea Wood,
Carolyn, yes?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Sue was
Don.
here, yes.
And Don Hayes, yes.
Article 5, to see if the town will vote to appropriate from water enterprise free cash a sum of $130,000 for the purpose of funding the completion of the Main Street well project. Water.
this has nothing to do with supporting or not supporting, but
Mhm.
these are real important issues. I don't know why this didn't come up at, why this wasn't addressed as the annual.
It may have been, I'm just gonna speak, I've had a couple of conversations with the water superintendent
Oh,
also.
good.
And this comes probably more as a result of the problem with the Harbor Trace well, that they need to bring this forward and get this new Main Street gravel packed well online so that we can support the water consumption for the town while Harbor Trace remains offline.
That
We are
makes total
hitting,
sense.
yeah, and so, as we go through these, I see the theme of where the water department is trying to go. PFAS came at us fast and heavy just as we were hitting Q2 this year, so it wasn't there in time for the annual.
Okay.
But this really is to get the new well where they brought the old Main Street well and the Cross Street wells back online, but they did not, they're not pumping the same volume that the Harbor Trace had done. So it's really important that we get the Main Street well online. So just little.
No,
little
that's
water.
good.
All set? Anybody moving this one?
I'll move to, what am I moving to? I move to recommend the 130,000 for the purpose of funding the completion of the Main Street well.
Second,
We have the motion and a second. discussion any further? We're good, then we need to take a vote on the motion for Article 5.
Geraldine, yes.
Andrea Wood, yes.
Green, yes.
Sue Lucio, yes.
Don Hayes, yes.
Passes.
And sorry, it's kind of, Ross, do we know where the free cash would stand from the water?
After all of these articles.
Yeah.
My memory serves me correct, there'd be 130,000 plus left in the water enterprise.
But they're the ones that kind of keep an eye on that.
They do keep an eye on it.
They do, but I asked the accountant to check for me, and
Mhm.
they're all, the water department and the town accountant are all on the same page.
Okay.
Seem to agree with their results.
Okay, that's fine. I just thinking about, their free cash is separate from ours, and just want to make sure that they have a little bit more there for anything that may be unexpected. Okay, on to Article 6.
To see if the town will vote to appropriate from water enterprise free cash a sum of $20,000 for the purpose of well cleaning at Witches Brook Well 2. So this comes under the same heading as the last one.
It really does. This, the Witches Brook Well 2, the PFAS chemicals are a little higher there than the others, so we're looking to start doing that maintenance before we get to the next article, which is going to be the bigger. But yeah, and pretty much it's along the trying to improve the water system and the water delivery so that we don't have another PFAS situation, I'm sure.
I'll recommend to move the Article 6 for $20,000 for the purpose of cleaning Witch Brook wells.
Been moved second. I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. And so just another check, any other discussion on Article 6? Nothing being seen. We need a roll call vote.
Geraldine Bazikis, yes.
Andrea Wood,
yes.
yes.
Green, yes.
Don, you said yes.
Yes.
Okay, Article 7, see if the town will vote to appropriate from water enterprise free cash the sum of $75,000 for the purpose of funding the planning of the Harbor Trace PFAS water treatment facility. Same deal.
Pretty much the same deal. This is 75,000 for the start of a water treatment plant that would take and whatever the filter cartridge is, the media would to start that portion so that it's filtering it out, because there's no other, right now there's no other way. Now, and I guess the question would be, Ross, being this is water and it's PFAS, are we looking at the ARPA funds to reimburse anything, or is it strictly water, the water delivery system rather than planning PFAS?
I thought water quality came into
Under
it too for ARPA.
So I can't answer that question,
Mhm.
but I will find an answer, but
Yeah.
in the event that ARPA doesn't, I think
Mhm.
the article should stand. If it turns out, we find out between now and 14th
Mhm.
that ARPA is going to do it, we could either amend the article or move no action.
On that, as we know. Yeah.
Do you want a recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a recommendation for the $75,000 for the all-purpose of planning of Harbor Trace PFAS water treatment facility.
Well, second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Not mu- Sorry. The motion, thank you. Nothing being seen for hands raised online, or we'll take the vote, voice vote.
Geraldine, yes.
Dean, yes.
Sue was here, yes.
John Hayes, yes.
Andrea?
You on mute?
Is she there?
Yeah, she doesn't really-
I'm sorry. Yes.
Thank you.
And even if town meeting does approve it, and then we find out subsequently that there's other
Mhm.
funding or offer,
It'll just revert.
well, the money would stay there, and at a future town meeting, we would transfer it back into their free cash account or something,
Okay.
so.
Article 8, ready?
Mhm.
See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds in the treasury the sum of $50,000 or other amounts for the purpose of repairing the library senior center roof. Or take any other action. Well,
How old is that roof?
I heard someone say
it's gotta
12
be
to
12
15
years, it's 12 years old.
That
The place is
doesn't make
12 years old.
sense to be replacing a roof at
It's not replacing, it's a
repairing
repair.
and repair.
It's my understanding that the vendor that put it in has been back a couple times, then has stopped coming back and sort of cut off the idea, the option of the warranty. I further heard today that person who is helping fund or is funding the expansion of the senior center has offered to look into this and is meeting down there tomorrow with the key people, including the facilities manager, to see if that's something they can undertake. So I will have probably a better answer on what needs to be done and whether or not it's going to be funded by a private citizen or whether it needs to be funded by the town. For now, I would suggest the article continue on here. Since there's still things up in the air, you could hold your recommendation until, well, to a future date or as late as town meeting floor.
So Dawn, may I?
Yes.
I have a real concern about, well, two things. One, $50,000 is a significant amount of money. I would have thought that those repairs would have been brought up at capital planning. I'm just wondering why that has not happened. And I would think that it certainly should be part of the capital plan. Unless they have water dripping down on top of things as
Well,
we
I
speak.
believe they actually do have water, and I've been down there and you walk into some of the offices and rooms and there are buckets.
Great,
So I think
Okay.
that this is a repair versus a sort of a scheduled replacement.
okay, well, the second part of my concern is the, although I think it's almost unbelievable that we might have somebody that would be willing to donate the work. I don't believe that's allowed under state procurement. And the reason I'm saying that is my understanding, when the addition was first discussed, was that the town not, the existing building not be touched, because if there are repairs or work to be done on a building that is owned by the municipality, that must go through procurement. We have to pay fair labor for that work.
You heard somebody offers to pay?
Well,
Hmm.
I don't know how that all happens, but I would be reluctant to support it unless I knew that that was run by the state to make sure that everything was in line for how that's going to happen. Because you can't use donations to skirt the labor laws.
Hello? Hi.
Yes, Andrea?
Andrea, you there?
Oh, great. Thank,
Yep.
thank you. Thank you.
Andrea, we
I'm
didn't,
sorry. I had a phone call. The man who's fixing my furnace, which is broken, called and I was on the telephone.
oh, okay. So did you get to hear anything of what we said?
Yes, I did.
Did
I,
you
my
get
big
that?
question, my big question and concern is the person who did it initially came back several times and couldn't fix the roof. What is the real nature of this repair? I mean, the
Yeah,
symptom
well,
is the
I-
dripping water, but
Is
The
it
symptoms
failings
of
or
dripping
something?
water in multiple locations. I can tell you that it's rather vague on what the repair is and is needed and the cost. It was someone's best estimate to get it in time for the warrant. But there is a group of experts who are going to be down there tomorrow and going up the roof and figure out exactly what needs to be done. So that's will help us get the right scope and potentially the right dollars.
yes.
As chief procurement officer, there is no restrictions or no problems with somebody using private funds to fix a municipal building. We're not going, we don't have to go out to bid because it's no town money being used. We don't have to use prevailing wages because there's no town money being used.
Could we check
Yeah.
with town council on that, please?
Sure.
Would we
I
accept
mean,
it
unless-
then as a gift?
Unless I hear otherwise from town council, it was town council that explained the nuances of that to me in the past.
I would be glad to check, but this is my advice as town administrator and chief procurement officer. If private funds are used, to get away from having to pay prevailing wage. You might understand that's how that whole expansion is being done is with private funds, and therefore it wasn't bid and prevailing wages aren't applied. We thought that the way repair was going to happen is the contractor that was doing the roof on the expansion was going to do the repair because he was there and up
Yeah.
there, but he was going to then charge the town for that.
Right.
That's back to requiring procurement.
Yeah.
But if he's not charging the town, I believe we don't have to do that, but I will gladly get that verified. with
Yes,
town
if
council.
we could get something from town council for that, please.
Honestly, if we can get someone else to pay.
To pay for it, let him do it.
Well, I mean, in a perfect world, that would be very nice, but I just want to make sure all our Ts are crossed because that was not my understanding in the past.
So we'll just put that on hold.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was
can
gonna
we
say-
just
With,
hold this for the next time?
yeah, for Article 8, we'll say, we'll take no action now.
But I think-
on this, or-
And if it's okay with the board, then when I get to the point that I need to send it to the printers,
Mhm.
I would just put down finance committee will recommend a town meeting.
Well, no, we were going to meet again on the 14th.
Okay, but
Mhm.
if you haven't gotten to the point of a vote, when I need to go to press,
When you
which
need
is
it, right.
16th or 17th.
Yeah.
I'll just,
No, my hope is that we'll be able to do a recommendation or not on this at our next meeting.
What's the
There's
difference
time.
between this and the gentleman who's paying for what's the difference? It's still a gift.
There are nuances involved that I'd rather not. I don't want to try to remember per se. I just remember being told at the time that that the town must be very careful
Mhm.
about that. okay? So let town council explain it.
Very careful, we shall be.
Article 9, see if the town will vote to accept Mass General Law, Chapter 19K, these to allow the town clerk who has completed the necessary courses of study and training and has been awarded a certificate by the Mass Town Clerks Association as a certified Massachusetts municipal clerk. Congratulations. To receive as compensation from such town in addition to the regular annual compensation paid by such town for services in such office, an amount equal to 10% of such regular annual compensation, but not more than $1,000 a year. So
I'll recommend that.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to support Article 9 in the second. Any further discussion?
She seconded, and
yeah,
She did, yeah. Andrea seconded, so if there's, now that we have the motion, if there's any other discussion on the motion before us to support this.
makes sense to me.
Hello,
Okay.
John.
Yeah.
Hi.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Could you help me through?
She's talking, yeah, I thought, she said John, not John.
Andrea,
Sorry.
I know, I want to just.
No.
Andrea?
Now she's on mute.
Hmm, okay. So, then we'll take the roll vote now, please.
Carolyn, yes.
Jean, yes.
Sue Lucio, yes.
Don Hayes, yes.
Andrea, raise your hand.
She probably on the phone,
She's
so
probably
she
on the
doesn't
phone,
have that.
Can we come back to the vote then?
We'll come back to her for the final vote
Okay.
on Article 9.
Article 10, see if the town will vote to amend the
Okay,
general bylaws.
This does not appear to be a financial. This is
Well, it's financial in terms of
receiving,
fee, but I don't
yeah.
think the fee is changing. I don't think
no, it appears the number, the quantity of vehicles and
Yep.
the frequency of when it.
so
would be.
finance committee, what do we usually put on something like that?
If we do anything, does it?
Well,
Us-
we'll fill in the blank next time.
Yeah, usually finance committee doesn't,
You don't have to do anything.
we don't have to do anything with it. We don't, it's not
I don't,
associated with the tax rate. It's not associated with anything financially in the budget. So we usually just,
I can leave it blank.
We'll
There's
leave it,
nothing,
yeah.
nothing you have to say unless you want to say,
No, all right.
we either recommend for or against it, but I don't know. I just leave it blank. But it's up to you.
unless you want more money, don't.
okay, so we're back to Article 2. If the town will vote to raise and appropriate a transfer from available funds in the treasury the sum of $150,724.46. For the purpose of offsetting changes to the FY22 budget that weren't known last May or take any other action. Okay. Who gets to start?
This sheet has the same information that's at the back of the warrant,
Mhm.
but the right-hand column has some explanation as to why it's being done. Keep the warrant from having either real small print or whatever. I didn't include that last column in the warrant, so it's just the numbers. I don't know, we may decide we want to do this as a handout or something. But,
Well, ask questions first, Mr. Chair.
Mhm. Oh, okay, so let's.
Okay. Is the plan to still take this money from free cash? Are we lucky enough to get that anyway? I mean, what's the
I-
funding, what's the
well,
funding source
One of,
here?
one of the
That's
pieces that I did talk to Ross about coming in, was when we put together and approved the budget at town meeting, we had a set of revenues with those assumptions.
Mhm.
And so I thought we need to go back and look at where we are to date versus the revenue that we had been presented with at that point. Um, In the spreadsheet,
But I'm not quite
Yeah.
there yet.
right, it's kind of, but if,
I'm just talking about free cash.
So to, I think, answer your question. My intended funding source for all these articles, but especially this one, the 150,000, is free cash.
Okay,
It is gonna be down to the wire to get it certified in time. I My backup plan, that's still tenuous at this time, is stabilization. And I guess my third option would be raise and appropriate, which is also tight because we need to be able to finish the tax classification and set the tax rate so we can get the tax bills out. And I've had correspondence back and forth with the assessors, the accountant, and DLS and DLR. So, the earliest we could set the tax rate is December 15th. Well, that will work, but we need to scramble in order to get tax bills out. So this is all tight. But this is my best estimate today. Obviously, by town meeting, I will have a better plan with options.
all right. Well, I have a thought. May I? Let's say that we took the settlement amount, if you will, the TA, the former TA, what we owe, not just for this year, but for next year, okay? And what's that, 222, something like that? Let's say $200,000, okay? And let's say, or even just for this year, okay, because this is the year that we're most worried about. So that's 111, right? Let's take, can we take that, because it's a one-time expense, and put it into a special article, or a special vote, if you will, to put it in a fund from which to, over time, pay off, pay that amount out to a former employee?
As to borrow it?
No, that we use free cash for that separate fund. And the reason I'm saying that is that extra money that's in that line item is going to make everything look kind of funky going forward. If you're looking at how much did you spend on this line item last year versus how much did you spend this year versus what is it next year? And we look at comparisons because that's your operating budget.
right, but so.
Taking it out of the operating budget
Mhm.
separates it out from your total for your operating budget. It makes it cleaner to do it that way. And if
Yep.
we were to do that for the $111,000, okay, that would leave us 40 something. Is that what we're looking for in total?
That would be, yeah, so
Okay.
if you're doing 111, so.
Okay, so let's say we're left now with, all right, now we need to fund $40,000 in the operating budget for all of these salary adjustments that we're making. Okay, and these are live, these are real ongoing salaries. there are possibly other places we could look to pay for some of that 40,000. Where are we with our expenses so far? Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Taking that account out of it, that line item out of it, okay? Because that's going to mess it up if you're looking at the bottom line, where are we at? But where are we in, in the various budgets? Can we find $40,000 by doing any of a number of things? Putting a
Mhm.
freeze on hiring, except for necessary things, like
Mhm.
an accountant and a treasurer, you know? Can we live with a part-time, any of those,
Mhm.
including the TA? Are there expected monies coming back that are unexpended in articles? Typically, what we'd look at is part of the budget for next year.
Mhm.
But what I'm suggesting is, why not look at some of those this year? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, $40,000 isn't a huge amount of money. I wish I had it to spend, but, you know. So, I guess I'm just challenging
Putting,
the assumption that we have to take the whole thing from free cash.
Mhm.
The one-time expense of the TA thing, fine, I'll go with that. Put it aside in a separate place and approve it on its own merit.
Yeah.
But the operating budget adjustments for our union contracts, I think, is just, we should be able to find that money someplace, or at least part of it.
I would be glad to comment on those if you'd like.
Sure, let's start, let's keep, yeah, it's kind of like, I had questions on the first two lines. We got the town administrator salary, where, and let's see if any of it weaves together. Basically, I was looking at that line and we're taking it from the 133 that it was, and we're going up to 244. The questions I have, how is that going forward? So we had a town administrator that was in the budget for 133 this year. That was assuming one person for the 12 months. Since that time, we haven't had that, but to suit, so what's the plan for this total now?
For the rest of the year.
For the rest of the year,
Mhm.
we have an interim, and we're going out on a search committee to find, so what's the pay? Is it gonna be 2 town administrators? Are you gonna stay on to transfer knowledge and things about the town to the new town administrator? So looking at the budget of how many people are we paying for that position, it's gonna be this year only. Next year, we get into, I would assume, I hope, by then, we're at one person in the town administrator role and one salary, or 2 part-time people, or whatever the salary is moving forward. We have that. The second line that goes with that is the wage settlements. That was put in at the annual town meeting as a placeholder for 3 salaries that were under negotiation at the time. It was the town administrator, the police chief, and the fire chief. And so that was to be at this special town meeting. It was supposed to be divided out and put on the 3 individual salary lines. What I read in the changes is we're putting in money for the fire chief, money for the police chief, and we're also increasing this line. So it's taken it from the 18,500 that it was, or 18,750, and the total's going to go up somewhere around 30,000 for that. So,
That doesn't make sense either.
So
it's little bit of town administrator. But, you know, and to Sue's point, does it make sense to have a different, a second line for the town administrator that we're paying, but is not part of the normal operating budget?
Well, the settlement, if it covered the police and fire, that should go away.
That's right.
For next year,
It should.
FY 23.
Right, yeah.
The increase to 7166 is because they found out they had to make a payment for vacation for the former town administrator.
Mhm.
And that was money that hadn't been budgeted, so it's being requested now to cover the payment they had to make per the settlement agreement.
Well, in that case, I'd take that piece of it and put it into that other fund, if you will. Outside of,
So-
my point is outside of the operating budget. Because going forward, we're gonna be working with that operating budget. And if we're working with that, it's gonna make it difficult to even add up all of the payroll expense versus regular expense. You know, to do those kinds of flips of
And-
the
Mhm.
of
Right.
the money, it's gonna be difficult, because
And-
that's gonna be,
And a parallel to that, we had, I believe it was a police lieutenant position, and it had gone on for years. So when we were comparing in the last budget cycle, we added that line in so we could see that go away, and then the rest of the difference. So it,
Mhm.
by having it as a separate line, we can see it, knowing that it's not part of the ongoing annual budget.
exactly.
But
So that next year, if there's a 5% increase, God forbid, on accounts, all right? You're not gonna see, oh, wait a minute, this is really.
you're not gonna have to unravel it
Exactly.
at that preparation time, that it can be unravels for you before.
I think I understand what you're saying, is when you go through and you look at line by line increases, and there's 2% and 3% and all the way down the line,
Mhm.
as written now, the selectmen's, the town administrator could actually show a 50% decrease.
That's right.
I think all of you will remember one line item. You'll know, well, this is because we were paying for 2 people back in FY 22 and FY 23, even though it looks like a 50% decrease, we're only paying for 1 person. And I think, knowing what competitive salaries are on this, the 133 plus or minus a little bit is probably the right number to budget for FY 23, assuming there's no ongoing monies for the town administrator, the old town administrator at that point. If your request is to break that out as a separate line, and keeping it basically to appear to be level funded for the town administrator for this coming budget, and then show a second line that says town administrator settlement account or town or something.
Mhm.
And then you would know that that's going to disappear the next year.
Okay, but picture something else.
I don't know that I don't think that's a problem to do it that way.
But we need to explain it. If the article is gonna pass, we need to have a set of information that's going to be understandable.
But there's another piece, Dawn. One of the things that I used to like to do with the budget as a whole
Mhm.
is resort it so that it's sorted by payroll versus other.
Mhm.
All right?
Yeah.
If you leave that, for lack of a better word, settlement line item in there,
Mhm.
it will, you almost have to take that out to do any kind of analysis like that. Okay, that's my concern. Take it,
Mhm.
put it someplace else, put it in, I mean, I'm sure that the accountant can figure out what kind of a fund it could go in from which they can draw
Mhm.
the payroll, whatever it is.
Well, it could be assigned a new account number. I think that's easy, but the format you've got here,
But it's not, it's a one-time, expense. It's not a recurring operating budget expense. That's my point. Get it out of there, put it aside. And let the budget look like the budget.
Yes, and to exactly that point, I took the exact same descriptions and the exact same numbers out of the warrants. I wanted people to track. If they wanted to go back and see something, they could see, yeah, this is exactly the way it was laid out in May. And all I'm doing is showing you the differences. So there might be a better way to characterize this. It might make sense to put it in 2 lines the way Sue is suggesting.
No, I
But I
wasn't
was,
suggesting 2 lines in
That was
the
me.
operating.
well,
budget.
actually, if this
Think of
town
it,
administrator salary line doesn't change, then I would remove it from here, and then I would just replace it with one that says town administrator settlement line or something.
no, can we think beyond this? Think of putting an article on town meeting to create a fund to fix the roof. Okay? So it's a separate article that you're putting in a fund to fix the roof. It's not in the operating budget as a line item. Can we do that for that settlement account? And they would draw the payroll, however they do that, from that instead. Come next year, you need to replenish it.
You want to make it a separate warrant article.
If that's what's required in order to do that. Then you're keeping it clean. It's a separate place. It's totally separate. It's not, when you add everything up, it's truly what we've needed and spent. And that's to Dawn's point. What have we spent so far for the TA that's been working? And what do we plan for the rest of the year for the TA that's been working?
So, well, part of this $111,000 increase does include my salary.
Yeah,
A big chunk of it is paying for the previous person. So unfortunately, the town is paying for 2 people and you're only getting 2/3.
so I'm taking yours, and if we get a full-time, a permanent town administrator, and even if you overlap by a month or something like that, to put that amount in the budget, in that line. Because that's legitimately what we're saying it should cost, and we're planning on that cost, and are we staying with it?
I think I understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure it's that necessary to make it a separate article, because as I said, I know everybody's watching this top article because it's, I told you, it's breathtaking when you look at it, or heart stopping. And you'll know that next year, FY23, it should be showing 130 or something, give or take, not
No,
240. I mean, I think everybody's watching this, but it's coming out of this account, it's coming out of this line item, so.
Well, it has been, but that doesn't mean that the rest of it that you're looking for needs to come out of there.
So I will take this concern back to the select board and see how they want to position this request.
Don, may I?
Yes, keep going.
To my other point, finding the rest of the money. We should have about $17,000 left over from free cash from last year.
17,000?
Yeah. Well, in the.
Okay, so you're not talking about the certified free cash from last year. You're talking about what was left over.
After the operating, from the operating budget.
After
It sounds like.
after the budget, and there was a page in the booklet, okay, where it shows this is the beginning balance for free cash. This is how much these articles, these articles came out for these amounts. leaving, hello,
Somebody vote.
leaving 17,618.
So
So that's one, okay?
So, okay,
Diagnose the problem.
I will take this. I think what I'm hearing is the settlement is not part of the operating budget.
That one.
It's
Right.
it's an expense outside the operating. So we're looking at this to say, this is the operating budget, and this is what we'd like to see on these lines. On the monthly reports, I do see those other lines. I think if on Article 2, we define it that we want a separate, it will come out into a separate line. That's the discussion with the accountant. Can we do it? I see special town meeting all over the end of month reports. So there's a line item associated with the special town meeting article. So I think that's what the ask is here. To set up an account that is specifically for that, even though it's a salary, it's not for an active salary that
And it's not,
it's part of the operating.
Right.
Not part of.
and
the
it goes
operating.
away after the end of the agreement.
Or if it needs to continue, if there's an agreement that we have to continue paying something into 2023, we would continue using that and put it into the next, but it's not part of the operating, it's still, it's a town expense
Exactly.
that.
It's over and above the operating budget.
Mm,
Okay, so, I mean, the other questions that I have are, what, to Don's point earlier, what are our revenues looking like now compared to what we forecast? Because that's a big part of
Right,
what we have to spend.
just a minor one in my mind. We don't have new cars available, so if people aren't going out buying new cars,
What's happening to the excise
excise tax
taxes?
is kind of like, is those, you know.
So I've asked that question, and right now they're focusing on getting free cash certified.
Mhm.
And then they're gonna,
Yeah.
then they're gonna do a run on revenues to date
Mhm.
compared to last year
Yeah.
to date. So we know whether we're tracking ahead or behind,
Mhm.
to answer that question.
Yeah.
I may be wrong, okay, but to get that information, it's all in our systems somewhere. And it's a matter of somebody having the time to go in and run the reports that are necessary to pull that information out. Can we not hire somebody for 3 days to do that? I mean, we could call on the people, the Vadar people, if that's where it is. You know, they create reports all the time for people. I mean, let's think out of the box a little bit, because if we don't get all of these things done, my point is this: no matter how I feel personally about things, we're in a pickle and we got to figure out solution to getting out of it. Okay?
Absolutely.
And better that we all agree on how we're doing it, and we compromise if we need to on the solutions, and go to town meeting all speaking the same language. Because I don't think people are going to be really happy, to tell you the truth, about having to come back and add money to the budget. I mean, I have tons of questions about how we got here. One being, you know, at town meeting, it was said that all the contracts were settled. And now we're coming back, and guess what?
I believe the contracts were settled, but as much as a day ahead of time, and the cost of those contracts was not reflected into the numbers that was voted, which is primarily why we're here.
Mhm.
And I can't say any more about it because I wasn't there, didn't know what they said, but these were adjustments that weren't voted on because they weren't put forward. And now we are. I think you asked me a fair question about how revenue is tracking.
Mm.
But this is to pay commitments and obligations and contracts.
That we haven't signed yet. I haven't seen any contracts that are signed yet.
There's MOUs to sign to cover this. The actual contracts are being rewritten because there's years of MOUs that were never folded into them. So it's taken the union a while to rewrite the contracts and get finished documents. But we have MOUs, so I'm comfortable that the dollars that are in here now,
Mhm.
with the exception of the fire department that is still negotiating wages, that we have the right numbers. At least
So,
what we think we're gonna need for
Mhm.
this year.
so it's just the AFSCME contracts that this covers. It doesn't cover the fire EMS.
Correct, it covers the other
Okay.
four.
So fire EMS will have to wait until town meeting next year.
Or they're gonna have to, we're gonna have to close the discussions, and we are meeting regular basis with the union to try to do that.
Are there, and I just didn't notice, any of the ones that you show additions for? Do any of those include fire EMS?
I don't believe so.
So-
There is one in there for the fire chief.
But
But that's not the
non-union.
same.
That's non-union, I believe. Yeah. That's based on his contract.
So
Okay.
any money that was left over from last year's budget as free cash, you said 17,000 or something.
Yeah.
That no longer can be touched until this year's free cash is certified. So that's not available to spend up until
Well,
the free
hopefully,
cash is certified.
hopefully, I mean, because you
It'll
can't go
fold
to
into
town.
free cash,
Right.
and that will become the number that we'll bring forward.
Right,
What I'm hearing sort of very, very tentatively is there's free cash will be more than enough to cover this proposed town meeting and still leave a significant amount for projects next May.
well,
And I can't
It's not
quantify any of
just-
that. because
it's
we're
not
to-
just projects next May, we've got snow and ice. You
Yep.
know, that could be horrible if we,
You've got snow and ice, you've also got reserve fund that might equate some of those things as we get there, but that's something we'll worry about come annual town meeting time.
Mhm.
which, okay, well, I mean, it brings me to another thought, and that is, my feeling is we need to be a little bit more planful when we make our decisions. We need to think about long-term effects of those plans.
Yeah.
We can't just do something and say, worry about it later. And I'm not saying that that's what you said.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying that at all. You're in the situation where I can't worry about it until then.
Well,
Mhm.
and
But
believe me,
it's not your
I
fault.
do worry about the future. I
But
do
it's
worry-
not your fault. That's not what
Well,
I'm saying.
no, no.
Okay,
But I do worry about what this does for the spring budget, because
that's
at
right.
this point, I'm gonna be here for that. If
Mhm.
Don and his team move fast, maybe I won't, but
I
I
hear
still
you.
think I'm gonna be around to get the budget pulled together even before.
Yeah, budget
Anyway.
season starts.
But I mean, I'm
Sorry,
worried,
so-
I'm worried about what are the longer term impacts on
I-
capital planning, on the
Mhm.
kinds of things that we have been talking about that we need, you
yeah.
know?
Well, capital planning is basically separate from this, other than possibly the roof repair that you brought up. But we're not doing capital projects. There was a tentative article on here for $5 million for bridge repair and road reclamation. I think those topics need to be addressed, but through capital planning, through the annual,
Mhm.
probably for some number less than 5 million. But, you want to go
I-
through the rest of these or?
Well, one just popped in when I looked at it in the handout from the meeting last week. I saw a number of 813 or 813. Now I'm seeing 29,613.
Is that fire department?
That's fire department.
Yes,
Chief.
okay.
So that obviously went up pretty significantly in a week.
Yes. You want, is that
What
a
is
question as to
That's a
why?
question, yeah, that's a question is, I
17.
see the note about 1,200 a month for stipend. But is the salary really jumping?
29,000.
Yeah. And
I'm taking, I guess, worst case is the way I would cover that, to say that we will end up paying the existing chief through the rest of the year and pay the acting chief for the rest of the year. Hope
That's a
that-
recurring theme in my list of questions.
And I don't know how
And I
better
didn't
to
know that.
forecast at this stage. I mean, I could try to say,
Mhm.
well, we're gonna have it all wrapped up in 2 months,
Mhm.
and then find out it was 3 months.
Yeah.
So I put in to pay these people until June 30th.
Why in heaven's name, don't we just take the second in command in a department and put them in as acting chief? We've done that before.
We took one of the deputy chiefs, who gets paid a pittance of about $5,000 a year, and asked him.
Because
to-
it's a volunteer position, basically.
and asked him to serve as acting chief, which basically means full responsibilities.
Mhm.
And I think to ask someone to do that for no increase in salary, when you realize that we were sort of thinking maybe he could do it in 20 hours a week, he's doing it in 40 to 50 hours a week, because he has to do a lot to reorganize and straighten out some issues there. The stipend was something that
So
I
don't,
supported and the selectmen voted to support. Yes, it means in another case, you're paying for 2 people.
Mhm.
But I can tell you that to pay the amount that we are for the acting chief, that's a fraction of what it costs you to have
To do a full, a search and a full.
and put
chief.
someone in there.
but
Yeah, understood. It's
I
it's
could
kind of
have,
like it
I could
it was
have
a jump.
sworn that in the past, one of the other members of the department took over as acting chief. It must have been a full timer.
So, no, it wasn't. It was one of the deputies. And what happened is they would alternate. This week, deputy 1 is the acting chief, and next week, deputy 2 is the acting.
And it didn't cost us any more money.
The problem you had was, and it was a problem that was facing the department now, is there wasn't consistent management. They couldn't make operational changes and improvements because they were only going to be acting chief for a short period of time. And I felt, and the board felt very strongly that the need to be, because this wasn't going to be someone out for 1 week's vacation.
Mhm.
This is someone who was out for, which was initially a month, then it was 2 months, and now it's 3 months.
Mhm.
I don't know where it would go from there. And it would not be good for the department to have that leadership changing or alternating week to week. And yes, it costs us more money, but we are getting a department that is starting to reorganize and starting to run smoother, starting to correct some of the problems that were there.
Okay.
So, and that was a decision that my recommendation that the board ratified, and this, and now what you're being asked is the budget that's gonna fund what is decided to be done from an operational perspective.
Mhm.
Excuse
Yeah,
me, this increase, I watched the meeting where it was suggested. It was raised by Joe. It seems to me that the problem of how much money a deputy should be paid belongs to the fire department, not the Board of Selectmen. If they should sponsor it, they should have put it forward. They should have said, our deputy isn't getting enough. I don't believe the liaison to the department, that was his job. He's just to report what they're doing. You're, for example, now you give this deputy a raise. What is the next deputy to expect in a salary? you've got to clean up somebody has to clean up the fire department schedule before it's going to be fairly administrated. I'm not saying the person isn't working hard and doesn't deserve a raise, but I think this is the wrong way to do it.
This, it would be awkward for a deputy to then turn around and recommend that he get a stipend or something.
No, but the fire
felt that we-
department, I'm sorry,
Go ahead, Andrew.
but the department as a whole, they meet and they vote on regulations and things like that. And they set the levels of their things. It seems to me it belongs to, it's their decision, not the selectmen's. You're taking almost, although it's not, having a deputy serve as the chief is not exactly a normal situation, but can come up for small periods of time all the time. So maybe it is. It's almost like you're taking over the day-to-day business of the fire department.
I beg to
You're not-
differ with you. It's in the purview of the select board to decide the salaries of, I think, everybody in town, but certainly the department heads. And this is finding someone who can fill in on the spur of the moment for a long-term absence, to take on a significant workload. And the motion may have come from Joe as the liaison, but frankly, you can blame it on me as the interim town administrator, who said that I think from a personnel perspective and a fairness perspective, this is what's required. Again, it's a lot cheaper than if you were to go out and find a full-time chief from the outside to come in and do this on an active basis.
Well, then, if this is because
Money
of
wisely.
performance, great performance, and the other one, there's another raise for good performance. I don't think that the money should be given now. Maybe it should be raised at special town meeting as a reward, the total given then, not as a weekly stipend to get on with. I'm just very unsatisfied with this one. Very.
I do have a basic question. In essence, what this whole, well, this particular article is doing is reopening the budget that was already voted on in May. I talked to the moderator because I couldn't remember and I couldn't find anything that said what, if anything, is required to reopen the budget. I talked to DLS, to legal there. We do not have a bylaw that specifies anything having to do with reopening a budget, a certified budget, okay? However, our moderator said it has always been our town's practice to require a 9/10 vote to reopen a budget after the day that it was voted. DLS asked, well, does that mean within the town meeting? You know, like say by the third day of the town meeting and then afterwards. But the way that the moderator said it to me was 9/10. I think that a discussion needs to happen perhaps between you, Ross, and town council and the moderator to settle that before we get into town meeting and find out that the vote that we thought was just a majority, you could just vote on it, period. You may need another article as well that says move to reopen the budget.
this warrant, as I said beginning, is gonna go to the town council for review. We can certainly review that, but I can tell you my experience of having done dozens of special town meetings. You can open up a budget, and it's not 9/10. The only reference to 9/10 is when you're paying a bill from last year.
And-
In
and
Townsend,
opening an
it's
article.
always been a 9/10 vote is required to reconsider the budget. And that's really what you're doing,
You're
is
talking
you're
about the same
reconsidering.
night, reconsidering an article?
I think it's reconsidering an article or, yeah, that's
Which
probably
the
where,
budget is, an article.
right,
I think that's,
but generally within the same meeting, I'm
Within the
not
same
sure
meeting.
about.
But see, that's why I'm
outside.
saying the moderator and
Well,
town council.
so I'd suggest then that the vote quorum that's required for this budget is something that will be resolved when I send it to town council. That's somewhat separate from the finance committee review on the spending. Whether
Yes.
it's 9/10 or 2/3 or a simple majority.
No, I don't mean approving the money. I mean, opening the budget. Do you need a separate article that says, I move to reconsider the budget?
Mhm.
Well, and we're specifically not reconsidering the whole budget, which is
Right.
why what you're seeing is.
And maybe
the
what
30
it,
lines.
maybe what it
Mhm.
says is for these particular line items. Okay, so you're not reopening the whole budget, but you're reopening the budget as,
I submit that that's what more or less is said in the wording of Article 2.
but you're doing both things at
For
the
the
same
purpose of
time.
offsetting changes to the FY22 budget that weren't known last May.
Could you please check
I-
with
absolutely I
moderator
will.
and-
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just don't want to get there and then find out that it's not going to do any good to have the argument and answers trying to do that on town floor. The only other thing that I would suggest is you have a line item on this worksheet.
Yeah, you got a number?
Can we, well, no, just in general, we have 1 to 30. Is it possible to also put another column with the budget line item that people would see in the actual budget from May?
The account number?
The account number, but
But
when the
there's an
spreadsheet was
Excel
put
number
together-
too.
When the spreadsheet was put together, it has line items associated with it.
They're like Excel numbers. Here, yeah, you
Just
got
as
it.
an example. So
Okay, so these line numbers are essentially the same numbers here, except for this one, it goes to all the way up to 800.
Right,
You want me to bring forward that line number?
so that
Yes.
you know one
Yes.
to one where the match is, yeah. So
Because
if
it's not,
anybody happens
it's not
to-
1 to 30 in the budget. It's 1, 1 equals,
Yeah, yeah, I-
You don't want,
Town administrator line, happens to be 1 and 2. The.
Well,
Board of
I mean,
Selectmen-
yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
it's just for cross-reference, that's all.
I mean, that's why I kept the exact same
Yeah.
descriptions in the same
And that
order.
helps a lot. That helps a
It
lot,
helps,
but
but some of the lines are duplicated. Do you still have the account number in there?
I tried
Well,
to pull, I tried to,
Okay, yeah, it's not here. It was in the full.
I tried to pull that off the spreadsheet, and frankly, I couldn't get the account numbers to show up.
Okay.
I mean, it's only 30
can-
lines, but it would be helpful.
Right, it's kind of like, so,
You think everyone's actually gonna bring that warrant from that?
Well, geez, I don't know.
Did I-
We both got ours tonight, so I was using it to look back.
I was using it to look and go back and forth also to see what it was, did it match, did it change? It's kind of like,
Can I-
because that's everything I looked at.
Can I weigh in on that one?
Yeah,
The account numbers were not in the budget book that were, they were in what the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen received that we considered when we were looking at the budget for planning purposes. But if you look at the town meeting book, the budget
Mhm.
items aren't in there. The
No.
budget,
Yeah.
the account numbers are not in the published
That's
budget.
right.
book.
correct. Because some of them.
But the line numbers are. And so,
And that's what I'm asking for.
okay, as opposed to, I thought I was hearing account numbers. Okay, thank you.
No,
So
no,
you want it to show old line
just the
numbers?
corresponding
original
line
budget
numbers
line
in the
number.
budget that we
And
passed.
and actually, I should then just delete the current line numbers, because if someone wants to refer to it, they'll refer to line number 647
That's fine,
versus line 5.
that's
Yeah.
fine.
That's-
Oh, yeah, if you wanted to do change number 1 to 30 and.
It depends on if you want to just pass out one sheet like this.
Well, yes, my intention is, and the board's opinion is, the warrant will show just the one sheet. It's not going to
Mhm.
show all 11 pages of the original
So
warrant.
to have, you could say they're numbered 1 to 30 with the corresponding line from the budget book.
Frankly, I think I'll just put in, if I can get the line number from the old budget book,
Mhm.
I'll just put it in
Just
there.
Pop it in.
And if someone has a
Exactly,
question, they'll ask about line 647 versus line,
Mhm.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
And it matches. Another question I had that came about because it was mentioned a couple of times, I believe. This rate and the value based on 26.1 versus 26. I'm looking at 13 and 14. In this case, there's a couple more in here, but these just happen to show it. So we're adjusting the total based on 26.1 versus 26. So when the original budget was written, it was multiplied by 26. And now we're saying the annual salary is actually 26.1 times this number. To get to the value. So my question is, how do we pay employees of the town? Do they get an extra 0.1? Or is there a salary that should be maintained so that when we have that magic 27 pay week year, that is money to cover the budget because it's going to look like they're getting more?
I think what they do is they pay on 52.2, which is the half of this.
Mhm.
And the annual amount that you've approved here is spread out over 52.2 weeks versus 50 weeks.
But-
Well,
So
it's
they get-
actually
so they get the-
26.
They get the same amount.
It's,
Right.
it's 26, it's bi-weekly though, right?
Right, but once every blue moon, 10 years,
That's right.
you get 27 paychecks in a year.
Mhm.
And so the question is, how is the employee getting whole with this number? Is there an amount, because they only get 26 equal pays, that we need to put some money into a holding account until we have that 27 week? Or,
Because they've made that adjustment in the weekly amount, so they're getting paid.
Well, there's one extra week though. Yeah, I hear what you're
They
saying.
don't get paid for 53 weeks, if that's what your question is.
no, the question, do they get, if it was, just for easy numbers, if it was a $52,000 for the annual, it's kind of like, if I'm only getting 26 weeks, I'm short 0.1 of that 52,000. I'm short 520 in a year.
The accountants have some way of figuring that out, but I see what you're saying.
But when you get to that 27th
How do you
week,
make sure you've got enough budgeted?
right? Yeah.
Right, I got you.
So that's the only thing that came to my mind.
Because they don't pay 126, they pay
127th.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And
when
I
they
mean, I
get,
can tell you,
when they get to that magic year, their pay is less per paycheck because in the end, it's going to become whole.
yes, and employees would get shorted, we would have heard.
Yeah.
And if we were running out of money because we paid, you would hear from the other side.
Yeah.
I've gone round and round with accountants and payroll clerks on this, and all I can tell you is they've got it figured out and it works, and employees aren't complaining. and
Yeah, the
towns
accountant
aren't
knows
running
how
out
to
of
do
money.
it, yeah.
So,
I just bring it up because that that 10th sort of,
I kind of had a similar question, because I was looking at some of these line items and the formula, if you will. If you have someone who's not full-time, they're just, part-time, 10 hours a week, let's say, and then you figure out what they get on a
Mhm.
every other week pay. You're basing it on the 10 hours a week that they work.
Mhm.
Okay, so every other week they're getting paid for 20 hours, and that's what we're budgeting. What if they work extra hours? That's not considered overtime because they're only a 10-hour-a-week employee. So you can't budget it into overtime pay. But I know of tons of times that I've seen people work a couple of extra hours here or there to help out when we've gotten busy doing such and such or whatever. Do they take other time unpaid or time off? How do you make that whole is my question.
The department heads are responsible for watching their budgets.
Okay.
So if they've got overtime this week,
Or
Better-
extra hours, yeah.
they better be careful because they're gonna run out of money come May.
Mhm. Okay,
And that's.
so it is tightly budgeted.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
You may get line-to-line transfer requests in May because they've underspent expenses and overspent wages, and they would come to you and ask for permission to make that transfer.
Yeah.
If it was a unforeseen, unexpected expenditure, they would come to you for reserve fund transfer. No, if their budget is $20,000 a year, and they figure out how many hours that is, they can't work more hours, or at least by the end of the year.
Yeah,
Good questions, but I suggested these are separate from the issue of,
well, they're not,
Well, we're
because they
gonna add
came
more.
up because I was looking at the way that these were figured out in the previous worksheet, so don't worry about it, though.
Mhm. No, it's kind of like that if there's a question because of the 26.1, we need, again, if this information is gonna be presented, we gotta make sure that we have.
well, in the warrant, I'm not gonna present it because I just got too busy to put it on the page. I didn't want to make it everything microscopic.
And just
But
one
I
other,
wanted to share it with you so you
Mhm.
know what we're doing.
so we still need to figure out revenues somehow. And it can just be like an indicator. Are we on track?
Mhm.
Are we, uh-oh?
Well, okay.
Or wouldn't it be nice, we're getting more than we expected in new growth or in new
Mhm.
property taxes or
Right.
something like that,
Does yeah, does an increased revenue somewhere help?
Exactly.
Increased revenue this year
Goes
does
to
not
next year.
help fund this.
Mhm.
It helps the future because it will show up as free cash,
Okay,
but, and it might give you more confidence in spending more now because you know
Exactly.
that we're
Exactly,
gonna.
right.
that's
Yeah, so
right.
I fully understand that. and I fully intend to get you a revenue to date
Projection,
tracking
yeah.
Mhm.
so that you can see that. And I think in the, did I show you the last time? I showed you a spreadsheet of local receipts and chapter
Yes,
90 funds
Yep.
to show you that
Yep, it
it
was-
seems to be trending up, which is a good thing.
Yeah, and I mean, the state is trending up,
And
so,
yes, but I'm not forecasting FY '23 revenue or expenses yet because
Yeah.
frankly, I got to get through
Yeah.
this.
is,
If I can fund this through free cash, it makes, I think, the revenue discussion somewhat less important because it's money we already have.
but, right, but I still think we need to be as careful as possible, knowing that we're in this situation. And we're also gonna have you're gonna have cumulative increases because of the increases in salary. We increased the base salaries, okay? And now we have a percentage increase on top of those base salaries.
Well,
I'm concerned because we need to look at the cumulative effect of that going out for the next 5 years. Because the last thing that we want to do is see an increase in our school assessment and not be able to pay for, I mean, you're looking at layoffs. That's about the only thing that you'd be able to do. And I don't think anybody wants that to happen.
That
So-
is the task at hand. Now, I remind you, as far as the labor costs go, those were determined when those contracts were
Mhm.
negotiated.
I totally
And that
understand.
covers your next 3 years. But I share your concerns about what does it do to the town in the future?
And that's why I'm saying we need to be more planful going forward when we make a decision about incurring something. And it has nothing to do with your recommendation for free cash for this. I'm just saying, I'm slightly annoyed that we're in this situation. But
Right? I hadn't planned to do a special town meeting.
I know you
right
hadn't.
now either.
I know you have.
Um,
If you had known that, you probably wouldn't have taken the job. But,
So
Um,
where do you want to go on these line items now? It's been
Yeah.
a long day, so I wouldn't mind if you let me know what I can do.
Could I ask an additional question? There are several positions, union positions, that have had their salaries cut. The raises as well, on union positions. All that action or that proposed action is met with union approval, been discussed by the union, handled by the union?
You're talking about the columns here that show a decrease?
Yes.
Yes, so it was because the numbers weren't firm when the warrant was printed in May. So some of these were guesses, and some we guessed, the town guessed low, and some they guessed high. So yes, the ones that show a decrease, their pay is not being cut.
it's just the budget.
The amount that's been put in their budget, thank you, Sue, has been changed. And the union is aware of this. I mean, that was part of the whole process, was going through and being sure that the union signed off on various job and grade changes. But
Okay,
my-
so that's not, they're
individual
not.
employees are not having their wages cut from last year to this year. We're just adjusting the budget to reflect. Now, we could have left all the decreases in the budget. We would have gotten them back as free cash the following year. But it probably would have meant that you have to raise 300,000 instead of 150,000. And I wanted to be transparent to you and to the voters to say, if we have decreases, we're going to show you the decreases. We're not going to try to pocket them and maybe spend them somehow. If there's a decrease, we're cutting it. And the budget shows
Okay,
pluses and the minuses.
I understand
I
that,
have-
but that goes back to Sue's earlier question or earlier comment, is that it does become somewhat confusing then when it looks like it's a pay cut, but when it's laid out the same way for somebody with a raise, it really is a raise.
No, this is just really an adjustment to budget, to line items.
Right.
That's what this is.
But if you look at the form, you could assume, like I did, that it was a cut in salary, not a cut in the general budget. Because the raises are actual raises to those people, not raises to their budget.
You know
in
what might
total.
help? I'm wondering if the column that you have called change, can you say net adjustment?
No, that might be better.
Do you know what
Or
I'm saying?
adjust-
Because
It does
Because
say
change
adjustment.
makes it sound like you're changing a salary. But you've already said, here's the original, here's the adjustment, and here's the net adjustment. And that it gets presented as adjustments to line items in the budget. So that they know it's not adjustments, it's not changes to salaries. It's not people, it's bookkeeping.
And maybe we explain that as part of the
Come on.
introduction of this.
It-
This is
yeah.
reflecting a budget change to account for the salary that was approved at the town meeting. It's just, we didn't know what the number was.
I have, there's still an elephant in my room. Can I talk
Okay.
about the elephant in my room?
Um,
Just one thing.
Just a quick, because it.
Yeah, it's just a, something to mull about. Has anyone had any kind of discussion or thought about what happens if town meeting says no to this? And I'm not being a naysayer, I'm simply trying to be planful. Because there are consequences for that happening. And I think to think them out and talk them out might be helpful, because it could be used to help justify doing this. All right? What are the ramifications if this does not happen? Okay, we're in violation of a contract, we're in violation of this. That might not be enough, but what actually happens? It probably means having to make cuts. What do cuts mean? What would be cut? What kinds of things would feel the pain?
I think that is a good question for us to be able to articulate. I would have to look at the union contracts, but most of them say pending appropriation by the town. If they don't say that, then you could be obligated to pay that contract and then further cut deeper elsewhere. At this
Or
point-
have to lay people off?
Well, that's, I think what it could mean is people run out, budgets run out in May versus end of June, and you'd have to cut. Now, I think it would be potentially cuts across the board. Every line item that is a plus might have to be cut.
I mean,
And
there's,
that means-
there's a bunch of different scenarios. There's a whole bunch of things you could say.
I think
A
that
freeze
means-
on expenses, a freeze on hiring, reduction of hours because of not having enough budget,
And
enough
then-
money.
I think it would still then mean the finance committee would have to do a line-by-line transfer. And you cut expenses in this department, but now you're gonna take that and put that in the salary line item.
Exactly.
I don't think, well, I would hope that we don't gut the town operations because of this. And if I can find a minimally painful way to pay for this, such as free cash versus raise and appropriate, I hope the voters will go for it.
Yeah, because if it's raise and appropriate, it's gonna affect their tax
Yes,
bill.
and I
Yeah.
don't,
Exactly.
I'm not,
Yeah.
I mean, the warrant articles still leave that as an option.
I just want to leave you thinking about that it's not being a naysayer, it's being prepared.
I can assure you, I think about it all night long about how we're gonna fund this, and I'm looking for.
It's not the funding, it's the what if you can't get the funding? What are the consequences of that? Because every action has a reaction. That's it.
I know we're getting close. I had a couple of things we didn't touch on. I will get them to, like the MIS. MIS had 2 lines in here.
Yep.
They're not on this sheet that I
Correct.
see. So.
And the answer is our plan to take those other ARPA funds.
Okay,
And so I put them in there because I heard there might be increases coming, but there weren't. So
Okay.
we didn't. And
okay, because we're already at 60,000 at the end of October, which is 3 months in, and you're at, roughly 90%.
that was with the recommendation of the MIS folks and specifically Chaz. And
Okay. Yeah.
again, we're not putting in stuff that we don't think we need.
No, I understand. It's kind of like, but when I looked at the replacement equipment line, it looks like we're doing it under other services on the budget. So it looks like the 2 lines are disconnected between what was approved. The account being approved had 18,000 in it, and it's sitting at 0. and the other line for the other was sitting at 0 and has close to the 18,000. So I think there's a little adjustment that we have to move over in that. Again, I just was looking at last week to this week and not seeing those. So anything else I'll put in email and see what I can get. And I know we can't have a discussion about it, but or get everybody's input on it, but we can revisit what my questions are. Okay. So back. Agenda effect. It's kind of, I think that was the end. I'm gonna steal your pile. Agenda from the bottom. Okay, Veronica, thank you for hanging on. Were you going to put us on the selectmen's meeting for November 16th?
It's up to you, Dawn. It's whatever
Okay.
works best for you guys. I know that there was, Ross had sent me an email where there was a TCAM needed X number of minutes in between and you.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to rectify that. So if you guys want to meet with us at 6 o'clock, I would have to check with the other board members to make sure that 5:30 is okay if you want it earlier. But if I don't,
Okay.
let me know and we'll work it out.
Okay.
I have you right
let's do
now
that.
tentatively on our agenda for the 16th.
Okay, and we may have a couple of open items, so maybe it makes sense for us. We were scheduled on the 16th at 4 o'clock, and so maybe it makes sense to then be on your agenda also and make sure we have everything that we need.
I think it'd be good for everybody to talk about it together, to just make sure they're, or at least plan the time.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay, so is 6 o'clock? Oh,
it's just a continuation, really, right?
well, there'd be a break in between
Yeah,
because it's two
but-
different Zooms. Or
So I
Veronica, should we?
talked to TCAM about the separation between it.
Yeah.
It's probably more like 15 to 20 minutes separation. That is to allow them to have time to terminate one and let the Zoom back everything up to the cloud because it saves the recordings.
Yeah.
The way around that is they could run one continuous Zoom from the beginning of the FinCom meeting at 4 or
Okay,
5 to the end of the select board meeting, and then when they edit it later on, they can separate it. So the short of that is your two boards can schedule the meetings as
I
you
was
wish,
gonna say is that,
and we
yeah.
can adjust the IT piece to accommodate you.
I don't think that we're going to need, if this is all that's on the agenda for then, I don't think we're going to need
Okay, because we had Article
too
8 that
much time.
we needed to visit. No, so it's kind of, so does it make sense for us to do, I was gonna say a 5 o'clock? No, it's gotta- I don't want to get everybody in the room and then have to,
We had 3 meetings,
yeah, we had the 16th at 4 o'clock. as
right,
the
and
next
then we
meeting.
have the 30th as well,
Right, just for any
just
wrap
as
up at
as
this
an
point.
extra one.
Yeah.
I think if we do our meeting from 4 and at 5:30, we say we're gonna join the selectmen.
Okay, that,
It's continuous.
pretty continuous. Then Veronica, can you check with the rest of the select board and see if we can do the 5:30?
I just
Oh.
don't think it's gonna take us an hour and a half.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I missed it. Cindy, you have your hand up? Looks like maybe Cindy King. Cindy K.
Is she muted?
She's muted and a hand is raised.
No, Cindy.
Unless that's the hand left over from.
For Veronica. Yeah, it's in the same spot. Okay.
My hand is not raised.
Okay, it is on our screen. Thank you.
Okay, so Finance Committee on the 16th at 4 o'clock, and then
Yeah.
a joint meeting, depending
Yeah,
on what
and-
Veronica hears, with the Board of Selectmen at 5:30.
Yeah.
If you can end up ending 15 or 20 minutes before 5:30, I guess.
Mhm,
5:10,
then,
but
yeah.
That would work. If not, I think TCAM would just make it one long meeting and
Yeah, I had changed it from 4 to 5, so it's kind of like, so we should be, that, so on the TCAM schedule, I requested just an hour at that point. So we should have
So we're meeting on the 16th, right?
we're meeting on the 16th at 4 o'clock
That's what we had
here,
scheduled.
and we have a Zoom.
and then you're gonna meet at 5:30 with the select board.
Correct,
assuming
yeah.
They invite you in.
Would it
So-
be, would we take our meeting at 4 and say whenever it's over? Recess
Yeah,
to reconvene at their meeting? Is that how we'd phrase it?
yeah, we could do that. Yeah, if we could just do a recess and reconvene in the joint meeting.
Sorry, I dropped off. Can I just jump in?
Yeah.
Does it make sense? You might have already figured this out for us to just all use the same Zoom link?
Yeah, that's what he was talking about, right?
Okay, good, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we can work through those in the next, the details of that and work through with TCAM and.
So I have, I
Since ours is the 4 o'clock. we
have a
might
clerk
just keep that going.
question.
Yep,
We had quite a discussion. I certainly wasn't planning on. I mean, what do you do for the minutes? I'm not used to doing minutes, you know? I mean, see the video?
yeah. No, it's kind of, it's supposed to be bullet points of the major things that we talked about. It doesn't have to be details and you should include the motions.
And that I have.
Yeah, the motions that were made, and by whom and seconded, and then the vote, and then in general, the bullets. And at the end, you can certainly refer to.
All right, I'm gonna try to do this as soon as possible and send the draft to you,
Okay,
okay?
that's, yeah,
I
that's
just
always,
hope it is.
it was something I learned.
I don't
It's
like
kind
the clerk's job.
so, at this point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
Second,
Second from Gene, okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
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 And
Yeah.
it's 6:08.
Mhm.
Are you
Yeah.
adjourned?
We are
We
adjourned.
are adjourned.
Goodbye to Zoom, folks.
Goodbye.
Aye.
Thank you for coming in.
Now, 7 o'clock, I have